Welcome here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on WakeUpCallDT.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT. Hope you're having yourselves a tremendous morning this morning, and I hope that you had yourself a fantastic weekend this past weekend. So hopefully all is well and you're doing well. I know Syracuse fans are very happy to start off the week with a W, so congratulations to each and every single one of you for that. Like I said, I appreciate you being here, hanging out here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, having some fun with us here this morning where sports truly meets life. And we have a lot to speak about here inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. Cafe Kubal with 5 locations in our community inside of Golisano's Children's Hospital, as well as on 401 South Salina Street, on 3501 James Street, on 324 West Water Street, and their newest location at 208 North Townsend Street in the Holly Green Cafe. So we appreciate them and all that they do, as well as their mobile cafe that comes straight to you and their home delivery and no delivery charge for those of you living in Onondaga County. So make sure you take advantage of that. With that being stated here inside of MonPazPopcorn.com's What's Poppin', on today's broadcast, a wake-up call with Dan Tortora. Like I said, a lot to get into, a lot to discuss here today. We have 2 fantastic guests that are going to be joining us here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and those guests this morning are going to be, first and foremost, we'll be joined by Alex Dodd. Alex Dodd is no stranger to the broadcast. He'll be joining us today to give his thoughts on all things ACC football. He's a writer for the ClemsonInsider.com, and he'll be talking with us about the ACC and how things look so far, the fact that we even got a season, have a college football season, and that the ACC is 3 weeks into their season. And on top of that, them being 3 weeks into their season, we know that right after my birthday, on October 24th, we're going to see the Big Ten return. The Pac-12 has elected to return. The SEC just returned this week, and obviously the American Athletic Conference and the Big 12 have been playing. So we'll talk about all of that here, as well as the Syracuse win and so much more as we take a look around the ACC and college football as a whole inside of MonPazPopcorn.com's What's Poppin'. Then we'll get into my one-on-one conversation live here with Dave Klein. Dave Klein, the head coach of the CNS North Stars. Dave Klein of the CNS North Stars, head football coach, will be joining the show to give his take on what's going on as far as football goes, what they can and cannot do right now, and obviously navigating the waters of a season that was postponed. So we'll have much conversation with Dave Klein, as well as a look around the community with Coach Klein as well. So we look forward to having him here on the broadcast with 2 fantastic guests. We're going to take a step aside here for a fast break. When we come back, we will start things off with Alex Dodd. Welcome here to the final week of September. And on Thursday, believe it or not, we will start off my birthday month on the birthday of one of my closest friends and brothers, and that being Ross Turetsky on October 1st. So a lot of great stuff coming up here where sports meets life, and we'll discuss it right after this on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. Creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvelite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, carvalanche, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvelite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
Cafe Kubal offers same-day local delivery of our products, offering no delivery charge for Onondaga County. Shop CafeKubal.com for fresh roasted coffee beans, cold brew, travel mugs, and all your essential Cafe Kubal needs. Cafe Kubal, coffee for the soul.
The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is located on 3680 Milton Avenue in the Home Depot Plaza. It is your family-friendly sports bar and restaurant. Folks, some sports bars aren't family-friendly. Some family-friendly restaurants are not sports bars. The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is proud to be both. It is that marriage that you've been looking for years. The Wildcat Sports Pub is your home base for your sports bar and restaurant needs, games for the kids, indoor and outdoor activities, and enough things on the menu to come back every single week and get to try something new. They're open Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., Monday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. For reservations and party information, call 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat family-friendly sports pub and restaurant. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on WakeUpCallDT.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT. Appreciate you being here every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, hanging out with us inside of the Cafe Kubal studios that you see right behind me here with that piping hot coffee or tea, whatever you think is in that mug. Could be anything. Could be the DT Special Pumpkin Spice Chai. So whatever you want it to be, you can go out and get that today for mobile order, as well as at any of these locations to go and hang out at Cafe Kubal and get yourself something to drink, something to eat. So we appreciate all that they do in the community, and you can find them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to see where the mobile cafe is going to be next, as well as all upcoming news at Cafe Kubal. That's Kubal. And like I said, the DT Special Pumpkin Spice Chai, I get mine with almond milk, is now available for you, so make sure you go out and get it. Inside of MonPazPopcorn.com is what's popping. We have Alex Dodd on the show here with us this morning. Alex is no stranger to the broadcast. Him and I have had the opportunity to get to know each other over the, I would say, the better part of the last 8 years, and I very, very much appreciate the work that he does, and more than anything else, the faith and the positivity that he puts behind things. So this man got started early like I did, and I respect that. You know, we started broadcasting when we still had diapers on, so I'm happy to have the gentleman on the show. Mr. Dodd, how we doing?
Well, I'm doing great, Dan. It's always good to be on the program with the good people of Syracuse, New York.
Yeah, you know, and the good people of Syracuse, New York finally got a dub. So what were your thoughts on these first 3 weeks for the Qs?
Well, you know, a really rough start in those first 2 games, just trying to find consistency on offense. Tommy DeVito didn't have the best start to the season in the first 2 weeks. I think you saw some flashes from your young kid at quarterback. But this week, like we were talking about earlier, you went back to the old faithful running game and were able to come out with a win. So a good win for Syracuse. Good to get back on the winning side of things when there are some other teams in the ACC that weren't able to get in the win column. So it's always good when you come out with a win.
Yeah, you know, and as I had said before, and I'll talk about it throughout the week, I am sure, but, you know, the facts that Syracuse, I've only been saying, and I said this to you off the air, for the better part of probably more than the last decade. No, probably the better part of a decade. I mean, the last time they had a 1,000-yard rusher was Jerome Smith, and that was under Doug Marrone, who's now the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And they just really, I mean, they tried to do all these things, and, you know, offenses are changing and this and that, and trying to sell orange is the new fast and whatnot. But ultimately, Syracuse has always been really good, you know, in history for running the ball. And I said there's no reason why Syracuse shouldn't be RBU, but they got away from it. You know, they had the Larry Zonkas, they had the Joe Morrises, and the Ernie Davises, Floyd Littles, more recent here, like in the 80s, undefeated Rob Drummond, Michael Owens, Jim Brown, and on and on and on and on and on. And they've gotten away from that. And I think that would have been one of the biggest selling points. And then seeing Sean Tucker do what he did, he had 100 yards in the first half alone on 15 carries, over 6 yards a carry, a phenomenal job. He ends the game just shy of 5 yards a carry with more yards than anybody else on the ground for both teams, including Georgia Tech's Jahmyr Gibbs, who is a talent and to be reckoned with. So he had more than that. He had more carries than everybody else, and he had more rushing touchdowns than everyone else in the game on both sides with 2 rushing touchdowns, his first career and his second career back-to-back. So we look at that, and I mean, I know that in the ACC, you weren't having to cover Syracuse back in the day, but, I think it's pretty easy for anybody to go back in history and see that this was a running team. What do you think about the fact that a running team, even just to appease me, Alex, that a running team that stopped running, started running again, and don't you know it, they got a victory?
Well, I talk about this a lot, actually. People think that now in 2020 that the way to win football games is just to run the air raid and never run the football. And I just think that's a completely wrong premise. If you look at the teams that have won national championships in the last 10 years, every single one of those teams, even LSU last year, they ran the ball pretty well against Clemson, and that was how they were able to open up the passing game for Joe Burrow. But if you look at those teams, the teams that have won championships have had good running games, and the running game has set up the passing game for them, and that's how they were able to have success. So I don't think football has changed as much as people think that it has, and you have to go to the run in order to win football games. You can run the air raid, do whatever you want, that's cool, but if you want to win, you have to have a running game. You can't be one-dimensional.
Yeah, and I think that the thing is, too, is we talk about time management, clock management. Running an air raid offense and having these, big-time passes, okay, so you get a 60-yard pass downfield, you get a 50-yarder downfield, you get a 20-yarder downfield. Listen, the better you are in, if orange is the new fast, that means the defense is on the field whether or not the offense is playing well. And we know, and we saw it in the first 2 weeks, when an offense is not performing for Syracuse, or any team for that matter, and the defense has to be on the field, it doesn't matter how good that defense is. They're going to get fatigued. They're going to get tired. They're going to miss a few plays at the end. It was 7-6 for a long time against North Carolina, 10-6. And then all of a sudden, the game ends 31-6, and if somebody, just looks at the box score, they say, wow, Syracuse's defense didn't show up. They did. They were just on the field too long. And then against Pittsburgh, they lose by 11, and we go back to that Pittsburgh game and see some of the things that Pittsburgh was able to do. Nobody looked great. Kenny Pickett didn't look phenomenal. Their rushing attack didn't look phenomenal. Their defense didn't look phenomenal. But Syracuse's defense was on the field for 34 minutes and 30 seconds. The offense was out there for 25-30. It was almost a full 10 minutes longer. It was the majority of it was almost like being out there for an entire quarter for this defense. So, I think when people look at this thing, like you said, you have to be able to run the ball, because no matter what you want to say about air raid this and air raid that, if it works, you are putting your defense on the field for a long time. If it doesn't work, you're putting your defense on the field for a long time. The only thing that really, bites down on that clock is the ability to carry the ball, get consistent first downs. And, I mean, you think about it, when you're winning, what do you need to do? You need to get a first down or two to make sure that they use their timeouts, run the clock out. So, I mean, I think no matter what type of air raid or what type of speed or what type of anything, if you cannot run the ball, you're never going to be that team that's going to win a national championship, in my opinion. And you're not going to be a team that's going to consistently get victories, because of the sheer fact that running the ball is the best way to make that clock seem a lot faster than it truly is.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I think one of the biggest reasons that, other than Joe Burrow, that Clemson struggled in the national championship last year is because they weren't able to establish the run game really at all in the second half against LSU. So then of course Mississippi State goes out on Saturday and throws for 623 yards and runs the air raid to perfection on Saturday. So there are some teams that can do that, but if you want to be a championship team, you've got to be able to run the football.
Yeah, and to go to that game, Mississippi State, a first game for Mike Leach coming over from Washington State, used to be the head coach of Gardner Minshew, who's now the quarterback in Jacksonville. Mississippi State on the road at LSU gets a victory in their first opportunity to run out onto the field with Mike Leach. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, you know how the SEC is. They're very, they're kind of like, I think the SEC should never ever buy stock. And I say that because they would be quick to sell it, and they're quick to snatch it up, quick to get rid of it. And the reality of it all is, a coach loses a game and, oh my God, should we fire him? And in this case with Mike Leach, he wins the game, and it's like I said to my buddy, he's going to get a 3-year, $60 million extension now because he beat LSU. So, we look at this, and it's the first time since 1998 that a reigning national champion in college football Division I FBS has lost their first game of the following season. The last time that happened, 1998, was Michigan. What are your thoughts on the fact that Mike Leach, now forever and a day, can always go back and say, not only did I win my first game at Mississippi State, I won it on the road, I won it against LSU, the reigning college football playoff champion. That's a big feather in his cap in case anything goes awry at some point in his time at Mississippi State.
Yeah, I think that program's going to have their up and downs. They've got a lot of progress they need to make. They don't. Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin inherits a lot more talent than Mike Leach inherits at Mississippi State right now, but he was able to use the pieces he had to get a win against what I think is still a pretty good team. LSU, obviously, they're missing pretty much all of the pieces off their national championship team from last year. They don't have any receivers. They don't have Joe Burrow. Their defense didn't look like it did last year. So they're missing a lot of pieces, have a lot of ways to go on a rebuild. It almost looked like they kind of sold their soul to win the championship last year. But if you look back at LSU teams from the past, it seems like that every single time they win a national championship, they come out the next year and are just above average. They've never really been able to get that consistency, even in the Les Miles era, or the Nick Saban part of the program. They just weren't able to get the next win, or even just to get consistency in winning. But I was very impressed with Mike Leach. I was very impressed with his ability to get those pieces that are there at Mississippi State to play out of their mind, essentially. And it was really fun to watch.
Yeah, an incredible game for Mississippi State as they get a victory over reigning national champion LSU. Once again, last time that happened, that a national champion went down in their first game of the following season was Michigan back in 1998. Speaking of Michigan, Mr. Dodd, the Big Ten, I've likened them to a college party. And let's say the college football playoff and college football is a college party. The Big Ten, they came out and they said, you know what? We're the cool kids on the block. If we don't go, nobody's going to go to the party. And even if they do, they're going to hang out for a couple of weeks. It's not going to be fun. And they're going to realize it's not great without us. And, everybody's going to go home. Then they started getting Snapchat, TikTok videos, and different things going on at the party, right? Dabo's out there TikToking. Everybody's having a good time. Dino's out there making speeches and whatnot on Twitter. And we're seeing all this stuff happening, and they're going, oh, my God, that party looks pretty awesome. And the girl that I like is there, right? The college football playoff is right there at the party, hanging out. It comes out with, here are the dates that we're going to start ranking. Here's the date that we're going to play the game. This is where it's going to be played. And they think to themselves, wow, we really botched this one. We thought if we didn't go, nobody would party. And it turns out everybody's having a good time. This might be the party of the year. So let's get back to it. We're going to start it. And then the Pac-12 obviously is hanging out there going, are you serious right now? And of course, they have to come back because if they don't, then it's the Power Four, and they're the only ones not back. The American Athletic has continued to play. Other conferences around the country have made it happen. What are your thoughts on the fact that the Big Ten had enough of that Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok videos, and they said, we got to get back to the party?
Well, first of all, I think that, it completely dispels the notion that the Big Ten was making decisions because of the virus or because of this or because of that. They tried to play the morality card at first when the ACC, SEC, and Big 12 decided that they were going to go on and play when nothing had really changed with the virus at that point, and still numbers are starting to go down in a lot of parts of the country, but nothing has drastically changed with the virus at this point either. And then the Big Ten decided to play again. I would really like to know what information the Big Ten is using to make their decisions, because I think the theory that you gave is better than any other, that they're looking at what the opinion is on Twitter and on social media before they decide what they're going to do, instead of looking at any real facts or anything to do with the coronavirus. Because if they were, at least the ACC came out and they're like, this is the doctor we're using and this is what he said. The Pac-12, when they decided not to play the first time, they were like, these are the reasons. If we see these things improve, we'll come back and play. And they did the same thing this week. At least some conferences are given reasons. So the Big Ten's just like, oh, well, Dan Wolken on Twitter said we shouldn't play, so we're not going to play. And they're like, well, we were looking on Twitter again this week, and Clemson looks pretty good, so we want to go play because we want to play them in the playoffs. I mean, it's just ridiculous, honestly.
And it is. It's a crazy thing because and I'll tell you the doctor that Ohio State was using. It was the first 4 weeks of college football, seeing that it went on without him. That's the doctor. The doctor was in, and the doctor said, "Listen, we figured it out. We figured out a way to play." Syracuse went through some interesting protocol, and I don't know if you saw it, because a lot of people. Here's the crazy thing, Alex, and this is just the world that we live in. So many people in Syracuse couldn't even watch the Syracuse game. Now, not because they couldn't go to the game, but because the game just wasn't on. It wasn't easy to get to by any stretch of the imagination. And Syracuse fans are starting to get very frustrated. Now, the ACC network has a lot of things that it can do and a lot of things it can show, but Syracuse fans have had an inability to easily be able to access some of these games. So they didn't get to see, some of the things. It was on a commercial break. ESPN ran a commercial during the time that Sean Tucker ran for one of his touchdowns. So I know that people were upset about that. But, I mean, did you get to witness it? Did you get to see anything about the fact that there was a delay? Now, I was there. I'll go down in history forever, and this is an amazing thing that still hasn't, it's hit me, but it hasn't hit me, that it was the first event in the Dome, first event in the newly renovated Dome, first football game in the Dome, first football win in the Dome, first media opportunity in the Dome, first non-Syracuse football personnel in the Dome, and there was maybe, of us media, maybe, if I highball it, 40, if I lowball it, somewhere around 20. So for us, let's say 40 people, nobody else was in that Dome except for us. That's a historic moment. On top of that, the game was supposed to start at noon, and I had my camera ready for them running out of the tunnel, and they didn't. And at 12:36, the game got started. The game was delayed due to the fact that they wanted to, even though they had negative tests on Friday, they wanted to retest 3 players that they remain unnamed. Did you, from your area, from out in South Carolina and whatnot, did you see any of this? Did you get any notice? I want to get an outsider's perspective of, were you watching a game and it said, hey, Syracuse's game is delayed, or did you get an email or something like that? How much did you know about the fact that, during this very unique time, Syracuse and Georgia Tech had to, they had to essentially test again just to be extra sure?
Yeah, so I was watching the game out, and I got the lady at the bar to change the TVs to different games. So I had the Syracuse game on one TV, and I was really confused because at first it showed people warming up and everything, like it does before a game starts.
Yeah. And
the next thing that I saw was like an Atlanta Falcons promo video that seemed like an infomercial.
Yeah.
I was like, what happened on the game? Why is the Syracuse game not on TV anymore? And then I looked it up and saw why, it had been delayed. So I definitely can see why that would be frustrating. Also, I'm very confused on why players had to be retested. Because if you're following testing protocols and you're doing the things that you're supposed to do, that should have been no problem. But it's been really interesting just how testing protocols worked out when teams have, a bad week of coronavirus tests, what ends up happening with their schedules. And it's been a lot of up and down and a lot of confusion schedule-wise. It's going to be interesting to see how things finish up. I think by the end of the year, probably everybody will have some situation like that where they're dealing with COVID results and seeing if they're able to go on Saturday or have a game canceled. So it was definitely interesting to see and probably frustrating for a lot of people up in your neck of the woods watching that happen.
Yeah, I had getting messages like, "What's going on, Dan? Are they playing?" I got a phone call that came through, and it was like, "Hey, this is what we're hearing. What are you hearing? What's going on right now?" And it was kind of just one of those things where I'm like, I had faith that I wasn't going to be going home, but there was that notion of like, are we, what are they going to do? So, and being safe and going through we go through the tent and they take our temperature. And we kind of, we got to do all that great stuff. So, it's interesting, but I'm happy that we got to get out there. Definitely happy that I'm one of 40, like I said, 40 people that got to be the first to this event. And I can tell you that, the additions that they made, including the behemoth of a screen and whatnot that's going on there. It's like 4 screens. It's a rectangle, but the inside of it, the screens are working. The outside of it, screens are going. The music in the center. All I can tell you is the next time, I guess I should invite the Big Ten, but the next time I'm having a party, I'm going to use that sound system, and I'll make sure that the Big Ten maybe comes to that party. But what are your thoughts on like I know we talked about the Big Ten and whatnot, and they said it was all about safety and this and that, and they wait a few weeks, and now they're jumping in. The Pac-12. It kind of felt, at least from my perspective, it kind of felt like the Pac-12 was like, do we have to come back? Like, I know everybody else is, but like, we got fires raging over here. We got protests going on. We got people that are super upset, and and Corona's still happening, and so do we have to do this? I mean, remember before all this stuff happened, people, and in California we didn't have water. It's just. There's so much happening in on that Pacific side of our great country that I don't know how you felt about it, but I got the notion from the Pac-12 that they're like, are you serious right now? Like, we're trying to get these fires to stop, and sure, we'll play football when we're, trying to figure everything else out in life. This sounds great. Why don't we just light our hair on fire and run around the field for a minute? So what are your thoughts on the Pac-12, and did you get that sense from them that they were like, do we have to? So.
I definitely felt like it was kind of everybody else is going, so I guess I'll go too. It's like the movie you don't really want to go see with your friends.
Yeah.
And they're like, come on, you want to go see this movie? And you're like, nah, I don't want to go see the movie. But then all of your close friends are going, and you're like, I guess I'll go watch the movie. So I've definitely felt that way about the Pac-12. And man, wouldn't it be horrible to live in, one of these towns in California right now with just all the things that are going on. But you probably would want to watch some Southern Cal football as a reprieve on Saturday, so good thing those people have something to distract themselves with, some way to release all the stress of the whole week. But yeah, I definitely felt that way about the Big 12 or Pac-12's decision.
Yeah, it was very, very strange to see it the way that it all unfolded. That coming here from Alex Dodd this morning of the Clemson Insider. So to jump back in, looking at the whole world of college football, but to spin all the way back to the ACC, because this is where I want to spend the majority of our time this morning. You got to see, obviously, Clemson. They're still ranked number 1 in the country. Clemson has only, they've gotten a couple things, off here. They played at Wake, won 37-13. They played what I jokingly said was the game of the week, a very scary game, a game that could challenge them, a game I was concerned about, and that was when they played the Citadel. And obviously that was a joke because, let me ask you this. I mean, when they said who their non-conference opponent was going to be, Mr. Dodd, I said my serious face and my facial expression, it didn't change. It was like, this is my face in response to, okay, we're playing in the ACC. Let's go find a non-conference game. And there's the Citadel. So, and every time Clemson plays the Citadel, I'm just like, what is it going to be 70-0? You're going to take the starters out, and obviously, they were up, I think 42-0 the last time I checked, and then they gave everybody a break. What are your thoughts on what you've seen in the first 2 weeks by Clemson, and can you assess anything after they played an unranked Wake Forest and played Citadel?
Yeah, well, first of all, the reason Clemson played the Citadel is because the SEC wouldn't let South Carolina come and play Clemson this year. So that's the reason why the Citadel was the opponent and not South Carolina. But the Citadel was already scheduled. There was money that was going to have to be paid out one way or the other. So Clemson just decided to have the Citadel come and try to avoid any contractual disputes with the money there, because Clemson's non-conference schedule for the next 7 years is booked up. So it would be really difficult to try to reschedule any of the games that would have got canceled this year. So that's why they decided to play the Citadel. But personally, I really think there is a lot of stuff that you can assess from Clemson in the first 2 weeks, regardless of the opponents. And really, you have to do that by watching. I mean, you can see just the efficiency of the Clemson offense and the incredible play by Trevor Lawrence, even though the defenses that they were playing against weren't anything that special. I mean, Wake Forest does have one of the better defensive ends in the country on their defense, and Clemson had a younger offensive line, so that was something that we were intrigued to watch, and they did fine. But I think Clemson's offense is going to be a force to be reckoned with this year. The play calling has been outstanding in the first 2 games, and just the way Trevor Lawrence has been able to command the offense, and really looks like he's just sitting back and just throwing in the backyard with his dad or something. The way that he's playing so far this year is outstanding, and it's hard to have a shutout against anybody. It's hard to put up numbers and not turn the ball over against anybody. And Clemson's been able to do those things. And I think that maybe you'll get to learn a little bit more when they play Virginia, but you probably won't get to learn that much until Clemson plays Notre Dame or Miami and Notre Dame and really gets into the meat of their conference schedule. But I've still been able to learn a few things so far.
Yeah, there's something interesting about Clemson that some people may not know, and I know that you know this and know it well, I'm sure, but around the country and even up here in Syracuse, that there's 2 guys that got to catch some passes in the Clemson win over the Citadel, Will and Drew Sweeney, the sons of Dabo Sweeney. There's a trio of Sweeneys in Clemson on this team. What's it like having that? What's it like seeing Will and Drew out there, seeing that they got involved, seeing that they, caught a pass or 2 out there, and, just what that means. I mean, Dabo to me always looks young, so I can't really fathom him having kids in college right now, but what are your thoughts on that? And the fact that there's kind of this interesting story of, the opportunity for him to not only coach a place that it seems like he truly loves, but to be able to have it with his family, enduring it, celebrating it with him, in the locker room with him, practice field and games together in a very unique way. Not every coach gets to do this by any stretch of the imagination. So what do you think about it, and what's that like, and have you gotten to talk to Drew and Will?
Yeah, so it's great to have a family, kind of atmosphere on the team in general, but then that's kind of your signal card for Clemson fans and people around the program that they're like, all right, this game is over, is when they run the Sweeney sweep and have Will Sweeney come on the jet sweep and get the little shovel pass. So that's kind of the signal there, but yeah, it's an incredible dynamic. I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like to be a dad and have your 2 sons on the field with you as you win national championships and compete in these big games. So it's really cool to just see that story within a story, that his sons are able to come out and compete and be on the field with him. Will is the holder for the team, so he's on the field a lot in holding duties, and then gets to come in late in games and stuff too. And I think Drew getting to come in was really good too, because he's younger than Will. He redshirted last year, and really kind of some of his first experience in a Clemson uniform. So it's a cool story.
Yeah, it's obviously something very unique to college football, not just the ACC. Here with Alex Dodd this morning of the ClemsonInsider.com. Alex, to take a look at the ACC, Miami is ranked in the top 10 in the nation, and they just did something to Florida State that, they've never won by this margin, 52-10, their biggest margin of victory against Florida State ever. The matchup in the last 20 times that they've seen each other, Florida State had 10, Miami had 10, now Miami has 11, and now 21. The last 21 matchups, now they have that slight lead. Is Miami for real, or is there still more that we need to see? I know we're only a few weeks into the season, but have we seen enough from Miami to say something right now, or is there a cause for concern? I know Manny Diaz is the head coach, and Mark Richt, there was his last year, there was a time where his last outing there, they started off good, they started off hot. There was that feeling, oh my God, this is a team that could, make it and go far. And I remember it was like, okay, this is going to be the team on the other side of the ACC championship, and then they fell off. So now under Manny Diaz, are people getting too hyped up on Miami, or is there something to get excited about?
I definitely think there's some things to be excited about. I mean, De'Aaron King and that offense looks incredible. The defense looked extremely good this weekend against Florida State. I definitely think they deserve to be in the top 10. But as far as really wanting to learn anything and figure out anything about this Miami team, you've got to watch them and see how they do when they travel to Clemson on October 10th. And, at that point, I'll be able to make a fair assessment about the Hurricanes. Yeah. Because, like you said, there have been several times over the last, 15 years where people have said, oh, the U is back. The U is back. And then, you get to the end of the season and the U kind of sputters to the finish line. So I'm interested to see what the Miami team does when they play the big dogs, when they get to that Clemson game, or even when they play Pittsburgh on October 17th. If you remember that undefeated Miami team, the loss they had at the end of the season was Pittsburgh before they got to the ACC championship and lost to Clemson. So it'll be interesting to see what they do down the stretch. And when they get into kind of the meat of their conference schedule, I was impressed with how they played against Louisville. I'm not going to lie, I picked Louisville in that game. But they really tore apart that Louisville defense. And managed to stop Mikael Cunningham and that offense. So I've been impressed with things they've been able to do, but I'll be interested to see how they respond when they play against the meat of their schedule. Yeah,
I've had Miami 3-0 through my predictions this season, but never in a million years did I think that it would be 52-10 against Florida State. Let's stay in the state of Florida. What is going on? I mean, did Jimbo see that this ship was sinking? Did he see that he couldn't patch up the holes? I mean, what in your opinion is happening at Florida State? They brought in Willie Taggart. It was his dream job. You and I got to be there. Put his hands up in the sky. He's excited. He's happy. They didn't even give him a full 2 years. Then they bring in Mike Norvell, my guy from Memphis that I've covered the last 4 years there, and I was with him the last time that he was there with this team when they played in the AAC championship game last season. I was there sitting right in front of him, interviewing him and the team, and right after that he went on to Florida State. What's happening in Florida State, in your opinion, and is this a cause for major concern? They're one of a few teams that hasn't won a game in the ACC. Louisville 0-2, Florida State is 0-2, Wake is 0-2, and Duke is 0-3. What do you think about Florida State?
Well, Florida State, I mean, I really think, first of all, that, Jimbo Fisher, when he found out how things were going to go at Florida State, I really feel like he burned the ships on his way out, and you still see consequences from it now. I think Willie Taggart really let bad seeds in the program run rampant. Wasn't a lot of discipline. I mean, even if you watch him now, you can still see that just undisciplined football. I mean, being down 40 and talking trash and, getting in guys' faces after a an overthrown ball and just this ridiculous stuff that you'll see at Florida State now that was not indicative of a Bobby Bowden program, was not indicative of a successful Jimbo Fisher program. And now it just seems like the bad seeds are running rampant. So Mike Norvell, I really think he's a good coach. I think he has a good vision for the program, but it's going to take some time. And do Seminole fans and the Seminole Booster Club have the patience for Mike Norvell to weed out the bad seeds and change the culture of a program? Because that's a lot harder question than just being able to run a better offense or run a better defense, is changing the culture of a program, and that's going to take time at Florida State. So I'm interested to see if they're able to turn that around, what Mike Norvell can do. Obviously, he's got to get out of the thing, recover from COVID, and then maybe they'll be able to have a little bit more success down the stretch, but we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be definitely be interesting to see. Miami on the top right now of the ACC, and Florida State right there toward the bottom. Pittsburgh has had themselves a 3-0 start as well. Is Pittsburgh for real in your opinion? I mean, they didn't look good against Syracuse. Syracuse beat the heck out of themselves the first 2 weeks, in my opinion. Pitt made a ton of mistakes. They missed 2 field goals. They botched another field goal try. I mean, they basically tried to give the game to Syracuse, and Syracuse's defense tried to take it, but the offense couldn't put anything together. Is Pittsburgh for real at 3-0 and 2-0 in the ACC?
Pittsburgh's defense is for real at 2-0 and 3-0. Going into the year, when I was looking at Jimmy's and Joe's and who's on what side of the ball, Pittsburgh was one of the units that really stood out to me as being a team that could be a force to be reckoned with defensively. Now, on offense, I don't know if I'm quite on the Kenny Pickett bandwagon like a lot of people are right now. I think that they've done some good things offensively so far, but like you said, I've just seen a lot of inconsistency from Pittsburgh on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense is doing their job. I mean, when your first 3 games, when you've held your opponents to 0, 10, and 20, and holding Louisville to 20, that is a challenge because that's a high-flying offensive football team. But I've been very impressed with their defense, not quite sold on their offense. You have to be able to do something offensively in order to really make a splash and do things beyond just having – well, I guess in a COVID year, an 8-win season is like a 10-win season. So instead of having just an 8-win, 9-win season.
Georgia Tech, Jeff Collins in his second season there coming out of Temple. He defeated Florida State, which we know is not a grandiose thing right now. It's not a big time, notch in your belt, so to speak, where Florida State is currently in the here and now. Historically, yeah, I mean it's great to say you beat Florida State, but they get that win 16-13 on the road in Tallahassee. Since then, Georgia Tech plays UCF and Syracuse and gives up a combined 86 points in 2 weeks while scoring 41. UCF has been called a lower team from a lower conference. I don't agree with that. I haven't agreed with that. I've also been around the program for the last 7 years or so, and I've been able to see it build, and then it was supposed to have to rebuild, and it didn't have to rebuild, and they found a way to keep winning, and I give that to the culture and the players that were there when Scott Frost and company, where he literally took everybody with him, and, Josh Heupel had to come into a situation bringing in his people. UCF, what does it mean to you, what they've done up to this point? This is a team that does not shy away from playing the ACC. They want their shot at everybody in the ACC. Hell, they want their shot at Alabama. They want their shot at Notre Dame. They want their shot at Clemson if they could get it. What are your thoughts on UCF in the grand scheme of things as they continue to win, continue to get those rack up Power 5 victories and whatnot, continue to stun in bowl games, and had their backup quarterback, who's now their starter, Dylan Gabriel, but their backup guy, when they played LSU, he had only played 2 games, and they lose by 8 on the West Coast in their bowl game that happened here recently. Is UCF for real, and should people stop dogging them so much? What do you think about the UCF Knights?
I definitely think people should stop dogging UCF as much. Now, as to whether or not I think that they deserve a spot in the college football playoff, that's a different a different story. It's a different question. I definitely think for their level, they're playing outstanding football. I mean, they took it to Georgia Tech. Now, I don't know how much it is to say that you took it, how much merit comes from taking it to Georgia Tech, but they handle their schedule. They schedule teams from the Power Five. They do everything that they can, but I just think the difference in competition is always going to be there. I think if the Big Ten and the Pac-12 had decided not to come, it would be really hard to keep UCF out of a playoff this year. But now that the Big Ten is back, I don't know. I don't know what the committee's going to do. I don't know what the merit in winning, 7 or 8 games in an 8-game season is going to be. But this would have been their year. It still can be their year if they continue to dominate their schedule and do the things that they've been doing in that program for a long time. But just looking at their schedule, they don't have another ranked opponent until they play Cincinnati at the end of November, and who knows what's going to happen between now and then for Cincinnati, because we've seen teams like them have a good start and then kind of falter down the stretch. So if Cincinnati's able to keep winning games, UCF keeps doing their thing, then Memphis is ranked on October 17th. If those schools can keep winning, then UCF has a chance to really make some waves, but we'll see.
I think what we have to do is just have UCF play Michigan, and if that and if they beat Michigan, I think that maybe people finally get what they. I mean, I know that there's always a when are they going to fire Jim Harbaugh. I think if he loses to UCF and Notre Dame and Ohio State, that maybe people will start ringing that bell a little bit more. But final note here, Alex Dodd here, writer for the ClemsonInsider.com. Final piece here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora this morning. Biggest surprise in the ACC in a good way, and biggest surprise in the ACC in a not so good way a few weeks into the season.
I think the biggest surprise in a not so good way is probably Duke, looking as bad as they have in the first 3 games. They have some really good players on defense. People thought Chase Bryce would come in from Clemson to be able to do something, and really hasn't been able to get any momentum on the offensive side of the ball for them. So they're probably the biggest disappointment early in the ACC. Most impressive, or something that's really surprised me, probably Boston College. I looked early in the season, or right before the season started, when I found out the quarterback was going to get to play. I looked at Boston College and was like, man, they really have some good pieces on the offensive and defensive line coming back this year. And it was like, maybe they could do something. But as far as actually getting it done, Boston College has really surprised me early, and I've been really impressed with them. So that's probably the biggest surprise in the ACC for me so far this season.
That coming from Alex Dodd of the ClemsonInsider.com. Clemson, it's always good to, obviously what we've seen from Clemson, what they've been able to do. You have a great opportunity and whatnot. Now, will you be able, and have you been, are they allowing media to be around the games? What's the story down there?
Well, they're allowing one person per media outlet that covers the team regularly into the stadium. So I've been working games from the TCI headquarters here in Clemson. We've got like a 4 TV spread that we're watching games on. So that's the way I've been able to cover the team. But I have a virtual credential, so I get to participate in the Zoom interviews after the game and things of that nature. So yes and no, I've been able to cover the games this year. But that's just the way things have worked out in this COVID world. So
yeah, absolutely. And above all things, being a person of faith, Alex, I kind of just want the last note here this morning to just be these last few months for you. We've seen the world shaken. We've seen the country shaken. We've seen wildfires. We've seen hurricanes. We've seen coronavirus. We have seen the normal everyday life of people passing away and people breaking up and people getting married and having birthdays and anniversaries and people moving away, getting jobs, losing jobs. All of this has gone on. Social justice. What have the last few months taught you, and how have you leaned on your faith? Because I know it's something that means a lot to the both of us, so I'd be completely wrong in my book if I didn't ask you, faith-wise, what these last few months have been like and what it's taught you.
Yeah, I mean, in the last few months and just really the chaos that we've experienced in our world that so oftentimes we can kind of push to the back burner and not really be confronted with has really been brought to light this year. And honestly, I don't know how people who don't have a relationship with Jesus are able to navigate a world as chaotic as this one. And if you are one of those people and you're listening on the air today, I just encourage you to pursue the Jesus of the Bible, who offers salvation to all who believe in Him. If you believe that He died for your sins and rose again 3 days later, and now is seated at the right hand of the Father, if you believe in that and turn from anything you do, say, or think that doesn't meet God's standard, then He'll meet you where you are and bring salvation and peace and comfort in the middle of chaos. Everything's not going to be rosy and peachy for the rest of your life, but whatever you face, you'll have a comforter with you and a guide who will tell you which way to go. But Dan, I've always appreciated you and your faith and your platform, the way that you use it for the glory of God. Nobody's going to listen to Wake Up Call and question where Dan Tortora stands in regards to his faith, and that's something I appreciate about you, brother.
Well, thank you, man. Yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna, I said at the end of my life, I don't want to get to those gates and have God look at me and Him be like, "Hey, you said you love me? Yeah. Well, why didn't you ever mention me? Why didn't you ever say anything about me? Why, with all the gifts I gave you and you have your own company, you think you did that all by yourself?" And I don't want to have that. Why didn't you? Why were you afraid to talk about me on the show? So I'm not going to be there. And I tell people all the time, you can believe or not believe, but at the end of the day, when it's true, I was like, I don't want to be on the side going, "Oh my God, Dan and Alex were right about this." I don't want to be dealing with that. I want to be going home to a place with a warm bed and get to see my grandparents again and my dogs and my family members and friends that have passed on. So I appreciate you, Alex. I know that hopefully you remember this, but you and I had been around each other. I remember, like me, I love going to. I cover all the schools. And so when it's 15 schools in the ACC, it's 15 up, 15 down for me, and I interview everybody. And that's just me. And that's because I care, and that's because I want to. And I remember doing it and being like the only person in the room. It was like me and Bob Holliday, and we're doing it. And then I hear this voice, this young voice. I think you're 16 at the time, and I hear you ask the question to Dabo Sweeney. And then I go, okay, here's another guy that thinks, hey, you know what? I want to do this. I want to be out there. I want to have my take on it, my angle, and I believe that I should have a seat at the table. I don't care what anybody else thinks. And I went, all right, so there's Bob out there, there's Alex out there, I'm out there. Good. There's good people out there working hard doing their thing. And then, when I come down, I'm usually sitting, eating, going and doing my work and whatnot. And there was a night that you said, "Come sit with us, Dan," and you actually found me in the line of the buffet, and we started talking. You said, "I really appreciate the work you do. I've been following what you're doing. I think it's great. I just want to say hello." We sat there. We had a conversation that night, and ever since we had a conversation at that dinner down in Charlotte at the ACC for football, we've kept in touch since then. And I don't know if you remember that, but I certainly do, and I will always appreciate that, and I'll appreciate our bond that we have on and off of the fields and the courts of life.
Yeah, I appreciate it too, Dan. Missed getting to see you this year at the ACC kickoff, and hopefully next year we'll have a good reunion with all those people that we get to see once or twice a year. But thank you for having me on the show. Always good to be on here and talk to good people of Syracuse, New York.
Hey, man, so listen, take care of yourself, be safe, God bless, and my best to you and your family, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Same to you.
All right, take care. That coming from Alex Dodd, once again to the ClemsonInsider.com. ClemsonInsider.com writer here with us this morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. So I appreciate him being here and appreciate him having some fun with us here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora this morning. So we very, very much I like having that and getting to see people that have eyes and ears around the ACC like I work and try to do here as well. to be able to get his thoughts, and not just on the Clemsons and the Syracuses, with him being down in Clemson, me being up in Syracuse, but to take a look at the Miamis and the Pittsburghs and the Florida States and the Dukes and the so on and so forth. So a lot of great stuff coming up here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Let's take a step aside for a fast break. We'll be back right after this, where sports truly meets life on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. And I appreciate you being here and hanging out with us here inside of the Cafe Kubal studios.
I'm George Townsend of Honda City with some good advice when buying a new car. The true cost of owning a new car is determined by the appraised value when you trade it. No vehicle appraises higher than a Honda. Next, look for low APRs and deep discounts. You also want low maintenance costs and great fuel economy. That's why my advice to you is to buy a new Honda. Looking pre-owned, visit our Honda Certified Used Car Center. Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard, Liverpool, or HondaCity-CNY.com.
This is Jim Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. I kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily. We bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand butter chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have in any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.